Hey, hi everyone, welcome back to this video series on Windows Server 2016, enabling your mobile workforce, giving employees the ability to remotely access corporate resources used to be a big benefit to most companies, but not necessarily a requirement. That has certainly changed in the past few years, where most companies and employees have the expectation that they will be able to get their work done from wherever they want to be. Cell phones are a big part of this equation, but are very limited in scope of what can be done with the small screens and restricted operating systems. In order to grant remote workers the ability to do their jobs from home, the coffee shops or hotels, we have traditionally used virtual private networking VPN, and most of the VPNs that exist in today's businesses are provided by products from companies other than Microsoft. The remote access role in Windows Server 2016 is here to change that, with many improvements having been made to the VPN components right in Windows Server. It is now feasible and secure platform for providing access to corporate resources from remote computers. In addition to VPN, we have a couple of newer technologies baked into Windows Server 2016 that are also designed to provide remote access to corporate resources in a different way than a traditional VPN. Direct access, automatic VPN. The truth about direct access and IPv6, prerequisites for direct access, remote access management console, direct access versus VPN, web application proxy, requirements for a WAP, Server 2016 requirements for a WAP. Direct access automatic VPN. In my experience, Microsoft Direct Access is the most common reason that administrators deploy the remote access role. The easiest way to think about direct access is to think of it as an automatic VPN. Similar to VPN, its purpose is to connect the user's computer into the corporate network when they are outside of the office. Different from VPN, however, is the method that employees use in order to make this connection possible. Direct access is not a software component. It is a series of components that are already baked into the Windows operating system, working in tandem to provide completely seamless access for the user. What do I mean by seamless? I mean, there is nothing that the user has to do in order to make direct access. It does that all by itself. As soon as a mobile computer receives an internet connection, whether that connection is a home Wi-Fi, public internet at a coffee shop, or a cell phone Wi-Fi style connection, the direct access tunnel automatically builds themselves using whatever internet connection is available without any user input. When your computer connects automatically, it saves time and money. Time is saved because the user no longer has to launch a VPN connection. Money is saved because time equals money, but also because having an always-on direct access connection means that patching, security policies, and management of these remote computers always happens, even when the user is working remotely. You no longer have to wait for users to come back into the office or for them to choose to launch their VPN in order to push new settings and policies down to their computers. It all happens wherever they are, as long as they have internet access. Direct access has actually been around since the release of Windows Server 2008 or 2, and yet I bump into people very regularly who have never heard of it. In the early days, it was quite difficult to deploy and came with a lot of stingy requirements, but much has changed over the past few years, and direct access is now easier than ever to deploy and more beneficial than ever to have running in your environment. truth about truth about direct access and IPv6. One of the stinging requirements I mentioned used to be the need for IPv6 inside your network. With the first version of direct access, this was an unfortunate requirement. I say unfortunate because even in today, 2016, almost nobody is running IPv6 inside their corporate networks, let alone 8 years ago. When this technology released, a lot of admins didn't even know what IPv6 was. Fortunately, the requirement for IPv6 inside their networks is gone. I repeat, just in case anybody wasn't paying attention or reading the old outdated TechNet documents, you do not need IPv6 to use direct access. I have seen way too many cases where direct access was considered by a company, but the project was tossed aside because reading the TechNet made them believe that IPv6 was a requirement, and because nobody uses IPv6 in their networks. Yet they discarded direct access as something that wouldn't work. You absolutely do not have to be running IPv6 in your network to make direct access function, but it is important to understand how direct access uses IPv6 because you will start to encounter it once your deployment gets underway. When I'm sitting at home working on my company laptop, direct access connects me to the corporate network. My internal network at work has absolutely no IPv6 running inside of it. We are a completely IPv4 network at the moment. This is true for most companies today. However, when I open command prompt and ping one of my servers from my direct access laptop, this is what I see. What in the world is this? Looks like IPv6 to me. This is where IPv6 comes into play with direct access. All of the traffic that moves over the internet, part of the connection between my laptop and the direct access server that is sitting in my data center, is IPv6 traffic. My internal network is IPv4, and my direct access server only has IPv4 addresses on it, and yet my direct access tunnel is carrying my traffic using IPv6. This is the core of how direct access works and cannot be changed. Your DA laptop sends IPsec encrypted IPv6 packets over the internet to the DA server, and when the DA server receives the packets, it has the capability to spin them down into IPv4 in order to send them to the destination server inside the corporate network. For example, when I open my Outlook and it tries to connect to my Exchange server, my Outlook packets flow over the direct access tunnel as IPv6. Once these packets hit my direct access server, that DA server reaches out to internal DNS to figure out whether that Exchange server is IPv4 or IPv6. If you are actually running IPv6 inside the network and the Exchange server is available via IPv6, the DA server will simply send IPv6 packets along to the Exchange server. Connection complete. If, on the other hand, you are running IPv4 inside your network, the DA server will only see a single A host record in DNS, meaning that the Exchange server is IPv4 only. The direct access server will then manipulate the IPv6 packet, changing it down into IPv4, and then send it on its way to the Exchange server. The two technologies that handle this manipulation of the packets are DNS64 and NAT64, which you have probably seen in some of the documents if you have read anything about direct access online. The purpose of these technologies is to change the incoming IPv6 packet stream into IPv4 for the networks where it is required, which is pretty much every network at the moment, and spin the return traffic from IPv4 back up into IPv6 so that it can make its way back to the direct access client over the IPv6 based IPsec tunnel that is connecting the DA client to the DA server over the internet. It is important to understand that direct access uses IPv6 because any security policies that you might have in place which squash IPv6 on the client computers by default will stop direct access from working properly in your environment. You will have to reverse these policies in order to allow the clients to push IPv6 packets and get their traffic across the internet. However, it is also very important to understand that you do not need any semblance of IPv6 running inside the corporate network to make this work, as the direct access server can spin all of the traffic down into IPv4 before it hits that internal network, and most DA implementations that are active today are running in exactly this fashion. Prerequisites for direct access. Direct access has a lot of moving parts, and there are many different ways in which you can set it up. However, not all of these ways are good ideas. So in this section, we are going to discuss some of the big decisions that you will have to make when designing your own direct access environment, domain joined. The first big requirement is that systems involved with direct access need to be domain joined. Your DA server or servers all need to be joined to your domain, and all of the client computers that you want to be DA connected need to be joined to a domain as well. Domain membership is required for authentication purpose, and also becomes the direct access client settings that need to be applied to the mobile computers come down to these computers via group policy. I always like to point out this requirement early in the planning process because it means that users who purchase their own laptops as a retail location are typically not going to be able to utilize direct access unless you are somehow okay with adding home computers to your domain. And so DA is really a technology that is designed for managing and connecting your corporate assets that you can join to the domain. It is also important to understand this requirement from a security perspective, since your direct access server or servers will typically be facing the edge of your network. It is common for the external NIC on a DA server to sit inside a DMZ, but they all have to be domain joined, which may not be something you are used to doing with systems in the perimeter network. Supported client operating systems. Not all of the Windows client operating systems contain the components that are necessary to make a direct access connection work. Enterprise does, which covers the majority of larger businesses who own Microsoft operating systems, but that certainly does not include everyone. I still see many small businesses using professional or even home premium style SKUs on their client machines, and these versions do not include the direct access components. Here is a list of the operating systems which do support direct access. During your planning, you will need to make sure that your mobile computers are running these: Windows 10 Enterprise, Windows 10 Education, Windows 8.0 or 8.1 Enterprise, Windows 7 Enterprise, and Windows 7 Ultimate. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you.